Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast.
All right, so get this, Donald Trump, crypto king. Yeah, you heard that right. Today we're diving into this White House summit Trump had with a bunch of crypto leaders, like right after he made this huge announcement about a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the U.S.
A strategic Bitcoin reserve. Wow.
Yeah, like
That's pretty wild.
it is like a digital Fort Knox, but for Bitcoin.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we've got excerpts from this Guardian article covering the
Yeah.
event. It's
I bet it's a good one.
it is juicy, trust me.
I can only imagine. Yeah, what's really interesting to me is how the whole perception of crypto is changing, you know? We're seeing it move from this fringe idea to the center of like economic policy discussions.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. And a government-backed Bitcoin reserve like that opens up some pretty big questions about regulation, adoption, the future of finance itself. Like it's
Exactly. So for you listening, this deep dive is all about understanding what went down at this summit, who was there, and what it all means for the future of crypto, especially if you're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, absolutely. And this summit wasn't just some casual meet and greet either.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking major players here.
Like who?
The Winklevoss twins were there.
Oh, wow.
Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy.
Oh, yeah. He's big in Bitcoin.
Huge, yeah. Even Vlad Tenev, the CEO of Robinhood, showed up.
Whoa. So this was like the A-list of the crypto world all gathered in the White House.
It was, exactly. And the Guardian article actually captures this sense of ambition.
Really?
Yeah, they quote Trump. He's thanking each guest individually, calling them high IQ individuals and saying, "We feel like pioneers."
Okay. That's a pretty bold statement. So he's aiming for the U.S. to become like the epicenter of this whole crypto revolution.
It really seems that way. Yeah, Trump wants to see the U.S. as the crypto capital of the world, and he thinks the strategic reserve is a key step to getting there.
All right. So let's break this down for everyone. How exactly would this digital Fort Knox work? It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Well, it's actually a concept borrowed from traditional finance, you know? Governments often hold strategic reserves of valuable assets, things like gold or oil.
Like a safety net kind of.
Yeah, exactly. A way to stabilize markets if there's a crisis, or maybe to exert some influence on global trade.
Okay, so in this case, the U.S. holding a reserve of Bitcoin could give them some serious leverage in the crypto world.
That's the general idea, yeah. It's a way for the government to signal their commitment to crypto and potentially influence how it develops.
But isn't there a bit of a contradiction there, though? I mean, crypto is all about decentralization, being free from government control, right? Doesn't a government-backed reserve go against that whole philosophy?
That's a very valid point, and it's something that a lot of people in the crypto community are struggling with.
Makes sense.
Yeah, some argue that government involvement, even if they have good intentions, could stifle the innovation that makes crypto so unique.
So there's this tension, then, between fostering innovation and also providing some level of oversight and stability, especially when you're dealing with something as potentially disruptive as crypto.
Absolutely. Finding that balance is going to be a key challenge as crypto continues to evolve.
For sure. Okay, so back to this strategic reserve. How is it going to be funded? Is the U.S. just going to start buying up Bitcoin on the open market?
Actually, no, that's not the plan. This reserve will be funded using Bitcoin that's been seized in criminal investigations.
Oh, interesting. So like reclaiming digital assets from the dark side and putting them to work for the national good.
Exactly.
That's kind of a clever approach. But I remember there was some debate about whether it should be just Bitcoin or include other cryptocurrencies, right? What's the thinking behind that?
Right. You have some really prominent voices like Brian Armstrong from Coinbase. He's arguing for a Bitcoin-only reserve.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, their reasoning is that Bitcoin is the most established and secure cryptocurrency, which makes it like the logical choice for a strategic reserve. They worry that including other less proven coins could introduce unnecessary risk, especially for something as important as a national reserve.
But then you have folks like Brad Garlinghouse, who are all about this multi-chain world.
Right. Multi-chain, just to be clear, refers to an ecosystem where different blockchains, not just Bitcoin, can coexist and interact.
So,
Imagine a world where you can seamlessly use different cryptocurrencies for different purposes, all within a secure and interconnected system. That's the vision behind a multi-chain approach. And Garlinghouse believes that a strategic reserve should reflect this diversity, embrace the innovation that's happening across the entire crypto space.
so it's not just a philosophical debate then. It's about whether the U.S. wants to put all their eggs in the Bitcoin basket or embrace a broader vision of the crypto future.
That's the core of it, yeah.
Yeah.
And this tension between a Bitcoin-centric approach and a multi-chain approach is playing out in the real world, with different companies and investors aligning themselves with one vision or the other.
Okay, so we've got this strategic reserve potentially filled with Bitcoin and maybe some other cryptocurrencies, all aimed at making the U.S. the crypto capital of the world. But there's this other layer to this story that we need to unpack, and it involves Trump himself.
Yeah, his personal investments in crypto.
Right, because if Trump and his family are personally invested in crypto, does that raise any questions about potential conflicts of interest?
It certainly does. And it's something that many observers and even some within the crypto community have pointed out.
Because let's face it, if you're a former president pushing for the U.S. to become the crypto capital, but you also stand to benefit financially from the growth of that industry, it raises some eyebrows.
Absolutely. And it gets even more complex when you consider that Trump has previously expressed skepticism about cryptocurrencies.
So there's this shift in his stance, which coincides with his personal investments in the space. It's a tangled web for sure.
It is. And this is where the story gets even more intriguing, because it's not just about a strategic reserve or the future of finance. It's about the intersection of politics, technology, and personal financial interests, all playing out on a global stage.
All right, so we've laid the groundwork here. We've got a former president pushing for the U.S. to embrace crypto, a digital Fort Knox in the works, and questions swirling about potential conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
Now, for you listening, the big question is, what does all of this mean for the future of crypto, and how might it impact you directly? That's what we'll be digging into next.
So, let's dig a little deeper into this strategic reserve thing.
Okay.
Because it's not just about hoarding a bunch of Bitcoin, right?
Right.
There are a lot of nuances to think about.
Okay, so beyond the whole digital Fort Knox analogy, how would this thing actually work, in practice?
Okay, so think of it this way. Imagine a scenario where the value of Bitcoin just plummets suddenly,
Yeah.
Panic selling sets in and the whole market is in free fall. With a strategic reserve, the government could step in and strategically inject Bitcoin back into the market.
Sort of like a pressure valve to release some of the tension and prevent a total meltdown.
Exactly, yeah. By buying up Bitcoin when the prices are low, they could help stabilize the market, prevent a catastrophic crash. And on the flip side, if Bitcoin's value just skyrockets out of control, the government could sell some of their reserve, cool down the market, prevent a bubble.
So it's all about managing volatility, which, as we all know, is kind of a hallmark of the crypto world.
Precisely. And remember, this reserve could also be used to exert influence on global trade.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Let's say a country wants to buy a large amount of oil from the U.S., but they want to pay in Bitcoin.
Okay.
If the U.S. has a significant reserve, they're in a much stronger position to...
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
negotiate those terms.
Interesting. So it's not just about stabilizing the market. It's about positioning the U.S. as a major player in the global crypto economy.
Right. And then there's the potential impact on a central bank digital currency, or CBDC.
Now, this is where things get really interesting for me. I've heard whispers about CBDCs, but I'm not entirely sure what they are or how they fit into this whole puzzle.
Okay, so a CBDC is essentially a digital version of a country's fiat currency issued and backed by the central bank.
Okay.
Think of it like a digital dollar or a digital euro.
Okay, so it's like digital cash, but issued by the government. How does that relate to the strategic reserve?
Well, one idea is that the Bitcoin reserve could act as collateral for a U.S.-issued CBDC.
Interesting.
This would give the digital dollar added stability and credibility, potentially making it more attractive for international use.
So it's like using the strength of Bitcoin to bolster the U.S. dollar in the digital age. That's a pretty bold move. But back to the reserve itself. Remember you mentioned that it will be funded using Bitcoin seized in criminal investigations.
Right, yeah. The government has already been confiscating Bitcoin used in illicit activities, so it's not like they're starting from scratch.
That makes sense. But we were just talking about how a strategic reserve could be used to manage volatility and influence markets. Wouldn't using dirty Bitcoin kind of paint the reserve in some way?
That's a really interesting question, and it's one that has sparked some debate. Some people argue that the source of the Bitcoin shouldn't really matter as long as it's being used for a legitimate purpose.
Yeah.
Others worry that it could create a perception problem, especially if the reserve is meant to represent the U.S.'s commitment to a transparent and legitimate crypto economy.
It's like trying to build a sparkling new house using recycled materials. It might be structurally sound, but some people might be hesitant to move in.
That's a good analogy, yeah. Ultimately, it comes down to public perception and whether people believe the benefits of the reserve outweigh any potential drawbacks.
Okay, so we've covered the mechanics of the reserve, the potential use cases, and even some of the ethical considerations. But let's circle back to that debate about whether it should be just Bitcoin or include other cryptocurrencies. Where do things stand on that front?
Well, the Bitcoin-only camp, as we mentioned, sees Bitcoin as the gold standard, the safest and most reliable choice for a national reserve.
Right.
They argue that including other cryptocurrencies could introduce unnecessary risk and complexity.
But the multi-chain advocates believe that a diverse reserve would better reflect the dynamism of the crypto world and position the U.S. as a leader in the broader crypto ecosystem.
Exactly. And remember, Trump himself has hinted at including 4 other cryptocurrencies in the reserve, although he hasn't specified which ones.
Of course, he loves to keep people guessing. But that lack of clarity is a big concern for many in the crypto world, right?
Absolutely. The industry is crying out for clear regulations. They need to know the rules of the game to make informed decisions about investment development and growth.
It's like trying to play a game without knowing the scoring system. How can you strategize and compete if you don't even know what you're aiming for?
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And this regulatory uncertainty is a major roadblock to the wider adoption of crypto. Businesses and investors are hesitant to jump in when they don't know what the legal and financial landscape will look like in the future.
It's like trying to build a skyscraper on shifting sand.
Yeah.
You need a solid foundation to support that kind of growth and innovation.
And that's what the crypto industry is waiting for, clear guidance from regulators that will provide that much-needed stability and certainty.
Right, so we've got this push for a strategic reserve, a debate about which cryptocurrencies to include, and a whole lot of regulatory uncertainty hanging over the industry. It's a lot to process. But remember, there's one more piece of this puzzle that we need to consider, and it's a big one. Trump's personal involvement in the crypto space.
Right. His investments and his family's foray into crypto add another layer of complexity to this whole situation.
Because it's not every day you see a former president diving headfirst into an industry that he's simultaneously trying to shape with government policy. So let's dive into that next and see what we can untangle. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Trump's personal crypto ventures, because this is where things get really interesting, you know?
Yeah, definitely. It adds a whole other dimension to this story.
We've got this strategic reserve potentially shaping the future of crypto in the U.S. And at the same time, you have the former president building his own crypto kingdom.
It's a pretty unprecedented situation, really. You have a former president who's not just talking about crypto, but he's actively participating in it.
And it's not just like some passive investment portfolio either. You know,
Right.
The Guardian article mentions Trump's platform, World Liberty Financial, and even his family, like launching their own cryptocurrency meme coins.
It seems like they're all in on crypto, which raises some important questions about transparency and potential conflicts of interest.
Yeah, because if Trump stands to benefit financially from the growth of the crypto market, can he really be objective when it comes to setting policies and regulations?
That's a concern that's been voiced by a lot of people, both inside and outside the crypto community. There needs to be some really clear guidelines,
Yeah.
to ensure that personal financial interests don't influence government policy, especially when it comes to emerging technologies with such far-reaching implications.
It's a tricky balance, for sure. And this isn't just about Trump either. As crypto becomes more mainstream, we're going to see more politicians and government officials with personal stakes in the industry.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so crucial to have really strong ethical guidelines and transparency measures in place to prevent any undue influence or conflicts of interest.
Transparency is key. The public deserves to know if the people making decisions about the future of crypto are also personally invested in its success.
Right, because without that transparency, it's hard to know whether policies are being crafted in the best interest of the nation or to benefit a select few.
So we've talked about the summit, the strategic reserve, the regulatory uncertainty, and now Trump's personal ventures. It's a lot to digest. But let's bring it back to you for a moment. What does all of this mean for someone who's trying to make sense of the crypto world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Crypto can seem like this complex, ever-changing puzzle, but the reality is it's increasingly impacting our everyday lives.
Yeah, it's not just about, tech geeks and early adopters anymore. This is about the future of money, the future of investing, and potentially even the future of how we interact with the world.
And whether you're a seasoned investor or just crypto curious, it's worth paying attention to what's happening because this is a story that's just getting started.
So what are some key takeaways for you listening? What should you be thinking about as this crypto saga unfolds?
Well, first and foremost, education is key. Take the time to learn about the fundamentals of blockchain technology, explore different crypto projects, and understand the potential benefits and risks of investing in this space.
Yeah, don't just jump in blindly.
Yeah.
Do your research, ask questions, and be wary of anything that sounds too good to be true.
Exactly. And remember, the crypto landscape is constantly evolving. What's true today might not be true tomorrow, so stay informed and be prepared to adapt.
Yeah, flexibility is key. But beyond the practicalities of investing, there's a bigger picture here. Crypto is challenging traditional systems of finance and governance, and that's bound to create some friction.
It's a disruption, and disruptions can be messy. There will be winners and losers, and the rules of the game are still being written.
So buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride.
But it's also an incredibly exciting time to be alive. We're witnessing a technological revolution unfold before our eyes, and it's up to each of us to decide how we want to participate.
So stay curious, stay informed, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Because in the world of crypto, the only constant is change. And that's what makes it so fascinating.
And potentially so rewarding.
Well said. That wraps up our deep dive into Trump's crypto kingdom. We hope you learned something new, had a few aha moments, and are feeling inspired to explore the world of crypto a little further. Until next time, stay curious.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.